Happy Thanksgiving, my dear viewers! After doing all these robot reviews on the channel recently, I've decided I wanted to change things up for a bit with some different topics. And first on the docket is a movie that I've wanted to jump at the chance to share with you all for a while now. But not exactly for the reasons you might expect. Oh boy! The movie that I'm referring to is none other than 2014's Not Cool. An edgy, semi-forgotten, heavily torn apart raunchy rom-com plucked from the mind of everybody's absolute favorite former YouTuber, Shane Dawson. Yep, this is where I'm at now. This is what I'm doing with my life. Here we go. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for me. I can only imagine what you're thinking right now. Like, why are you even talking about this movie? Or, wow, Wyatt, you either have some horribly disgusting taste, or some extreme tolerance, and self-punishment habits for that matter, being able to willingly sit through this movie without wanting to off yourself. It almost feels out of character of me, doesn't it? I don't even like offensive, edgy teenager comedies, so what on earth is something like this doing on my channel, where I usually talk about far superior, light-hearted film franchises that I have an attachment to? Well, allow me to explain. But before I go on ahead and start rambling, let me just lay something down for you so you don't have to waste your breath asking about it in the comments. No, I am not a Shane Dawson fan. I have a large, diverse, and currently unpublished list of YouTubers that I enjoy the content of, and Mr. Shaney Boy is nowhere to be seen on it. I've never even bothered watching any of his stuff, like his obnoxious skits, or music or short films,
Epic pool party, motherfucker!
Or any of his documentaries on Chuck E. Cheese pizza or something.
I've had over 40 pizzas in the last 30 days.
I don't even know what he's doing nowadays, or rather, who he's doing. Anyways, the TLDR here is that his status and presence on this movie have basically no influence on my view of it. Now, with that off of my chest, prepare yourselves to be fed a little bit of perspective. I've developed an irrational, illogical, utterly inexplicable obsession with this movie. I've rewatched Not Cool way more times than any other sane person on the planet has. Well, I guess that's excluding Shane Dawson fans, but I'm not too sure as to how sane they all are. And all this can be traced back to a certain other YouTuber, one who goes by the very comical I Hate Everything.
I hate this.
Mr. Frowny Face here has this long-running series known as The Search for the Worst, where he goes through a list of the 100 lowest-rated films of all time on IMDb to find out which one is the true worst. Yep, we're at that level, folks. We've officially hit rock bottom. And for whatever reason, one episode in particular stood out to me, this one talking about something called Not Cool? I found the video hilarious and became intrigued by the subject matter, so much so that I downloaded it onto my device to watch it on the go. Yeah, this was during 2019, back when I didn't have a phone with data connection, so I'd binge watch a bunch of pre-saved YouTube videos while on a road trip to like Montana or something. Boy, have things changed since then. And I gotta say, there's nothing more comfy than sitting in the back seat of mom and dad's vehicle, snuggled up, rewatching this video on a nighttime drive down to Ohio or Florida. Yeah, I have weird likings, don't judge me. However, one fateful Thanksgiving day in 2022, I was bored and through some online upload, I finally decided to check out this movie in full for the very first time. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, but curiosity got the best of me. So I watched it, and interestingly, I came out of the experience not feeling horrible? Afterwards, I just went on with my life as usual, but for whatever godforsaken reason, I couldn't get that stupid movie out of my head. Moments from it kept playing back in my mind, I was humming the soundtrack to myself, and instead of being like a normal person, just passing it off as the mindless trash that it is and moving on, I returned back to it and rewatched it. And it was right there in that moment that I realized, oh no, I've become a Not Cool fan. But before I share the rest of my story, it's about time I'd address what Not Cool even is or what it's about. Yeah, somehow if you didn't notice, I haven't really dived into that part yet. Not Cool was a part of a filmmaking experiment aired on the Starz channel in the form of a documentary called The Chair.
This is a documentary? Oh.
It was essentially a competition where two first-time directors, Anna Martimucci and Shane Dawson, were given the task of creating their own film, both using a limited budget and the exact same screenplay. Anna would go on to direct Hollidaysburg, and Shane Not Cool, with both productions filmed for the viewing public to see. The two completed films would then be shown to an audience to see which director made the better movie. The winner would receive $250,000. I'll bring up Hollidaysburg and the winner of the contest later on, but let's just stay focused on Not Cool. The plot of Cool Not follows a group of 4 high school friends. Shane Dawson as Scott, a former prom king nostalgic for the glory days.
I miss high school so bad. This is the first time on a Friday I've actually done anything.
Michelle Ventimilla as Janie, Scott's sister. Jeremy Lay as Tori, a former ugly duckling.
Look at my side!
Wanna switch lives?
And Drew Monson as Joel, Tori's hormonally supercharged best friend, I think, who desperately wants to get laid.
I post a lot of blogs about my wild adventures, or as I titled them, hashtag ass ventures.
It sounds kinda gay.
I disagree.
All of them return from college to their home of Pittsburgh for Thanksgiving break. A bunch of rampant partying, familial hijinks, and dating ensues, as the characters have to put aside their past grievances with each other to just enjoy life for what it is now and look towards the future. And that's about it. Pretty simple, honestly. Nothing inherently wrong with that plot outline. The problem with the movie, and why it's so notorious, comes from what makes it a comedy, if you could even call it that.
Watch my ass pop!
Your ass is popping!
Yeah!
There's a lot of screaming involved.
This is my grandmother! Let her out, man! Let her out!
There's characters vomiting on each other, a hobo straight up eats his own feces, Tori's married mother thirsts for Scott Cawthon here, Shane dresses up as 2 minor characters in drag, there's straight up nudity on multiple occasions. What again did my brain see in this movie again?
These are my kind of people.
The characters are constantly swearing 1 out of every 5 lines, and nearly every scene has some brief mention of sex, drugs, partying, race, social media, something. And believe me, it's a little much. I would know. I mean, the very first thing that is shown to us on screen is the literal bootylicious buttocks of some random woman. I mean, it's a great tone setter, letting you, the audience, know right away that the movie you're getting yourself into is ass! But the real mess comes from the jokes that are, for lack of a better word, morally questionable. Yeah, they didn't leave any stone unturned in this, sadly. You have jokes about the mentally insane, physically disabled, Latinas, Indians, the homeless, and African Americans at once, alcoholics, the LGBTQ, the overweight. Yep, it's all in here. Nearly every demographic or sensitive human topic has at least one joke in there, and the humor lacks any subtlety or nuance. It often just boils down to, this person is blind, this character is Hispanic. That's the joke. Get it?
Get it?
And who could forget the infamous line of,
Well, anyone who would do that is totes retard.
an iconic moment for the ages. From what I can tell, this usage of raunchy, stereotypical, outrageous humor can be traced back to Shane's previous work that made him popular to begin with, and it shows here. Now, apparently, a lot of the racial implications weren't meant to come off as so mean-spirited. Shane actually just wanted to be as inclusive as possible, but at the end of the day, it just ends up feeling like a series of jabs at people for the sake of shock humor. And I think it goes without saying, but it's uncomfortable, thoughtless, crude, juvenile, and frankly offensive. Not to me on a personal level, but still. Now, I can promise you that if this one element of the film was cut out of its existence, then the backlash wouldn't have been so severe, or even just wouldn't have existed at all. I would actually like to see an edit of this film, stripping out as many of the insensitive and immature moments as possible to clean it up a bit, because it's the one element of the film I could 100% never defend or justify. Well, that and one other aspect. We'll get to that later. At the very least, all the offensive and gross stuff packed within the film's contents are really only surface level junk. The actual core still consists of the character-driven emotion, just surrounded by edginess. Not to mention, it's still relatively soft in comparison to some of the horrific atrocities I've seen. For example, that one show called The Nutsack or whatever it was. Yeah, well, here is an actual audio clip from it.
Take the baby Dawson and I
Good lord. Yeah, mercifully, the movie never goes that far. Not that it forgives it for what it does do, but still. And I am thankful that Shane at least managed to stay away from tired humor cliches like old people or children or animals doing things that they shouldn't be doing, which tend to be overused in crappy comedies, but not really here, most of the time.
Come on, go somewhere awesome, like Kentucky. You're allowed to have sex with your dog there.
Oh, that joke did not age well. Oh. Not only that, but the characters aren't particularly likable. There are a few cliches like the forced third act breakup and some extreme emotional whiplash from scene to scene, and some things come right out of nowhere. At the beginning of the movie, they address that Scott's dad is closing his vinyl shop.
Yes, I'm selling a shop. No, we're not broke. Truth is, the store's doing pretty well financially. But most of the business is from collectors online, so keeping the store open doesn't make sense anymore.
And they talk about this store as if it's something the audience already knows and cares about. It's weird. They also introduce several of the main characters individually, only to show them together in later scenes, but they never really address that these two are meant to be friends or not. The film also suffers from telling instead of showing. Even some of the messages and motivations within the context of the film can be a bit flimsy. Like, oh no, it's not right for you to try and change people, even if said people in conversation asked you if they can live with you in your van. Yeah, there's definitely issues here with the story that go beyond just the tasteless humor. The majority of the characters in this movie don't really speak and act like normal people. They behave like over-the-top exaggerated caricatures, with a lot of their dialogue coming off as needlessly passive-aggressive, mostly with the comic relief side characters. Now, unlike some folk, I don't necessarily mind this on paper, as long as there's normal people to react to all the craziness around them. But there's like no real consequences to the terrible things people say or do, and it hurts any chance at humor or becoming that emotionally invested. Now imagine if, in The Office, when Michael Scott does all of his childish antics for attention, he never got into trouble for them, or if nobody reacted to something detestable he said.
we totally got you.
You're a jerk.
That's basically this a lot of the time.
I just want you to realize how f***ed up this is.
Now, I'll be the first to admit that there are things I unironically like about Not Cool. And there went my credibility. Great. Now, I am totally grasping at straws for these, but they are very much so worth bringing up, as they're alluring enough to keep me coming back to the film. Visually, it ain't too bad. Now, I don't know about all of you guys, but as someone who has seen quite a lot of YouTuber movies, I can claim that they are, more often than not, putrid, heinous-looking things. The Fine Bros disaster F the Prom, for example, which I think is way worse in this film, has this terrible gray or overexposed lighting, or makes the locations and settings feel boxed in, as IHE put it. That's not the case here, though. The color palette in Not Cool is quite warm. The production values are actually somewhat decent for a film of this caliber, and this is totally subjective, but the settings are kinda comfy to me, and not in the cheesy Hallmark Christmas flick kinda way, but rather the locations they filmed at are actually really appealing. From a fancy restaurant with a nice overlook to an open football stadium, welcoming party-lit houses in a snowed-in neighborhood, to that ever-so-picturesque incline that you see on everybody's credit cards, etc. While the setting isn't like integral to the story or anything, this movie kinda makes me want to go to Pittsburgh for myself sometime. Lord knows every time someone mentions the city, my brain immediately pops to this. The soundtrack is kinda fire. Now, I'm not talking about the film's OST here, there hardly is one. Nearly every piece of music played was licensed. No, what I'm referring to are the song choices. To be fair, a lot of it is generic stock music, and it's not like superbly fitting like in Guardians of the Galaxy or Shrek. And you shouldn't praise the movie itself for this music, but I don't know, man. I gotta hand it to Shane for providing me with so many bangers to listen to, such as Get Back Home by I Am Medic. I remember walking into the massive lobby of the Marriott Marquis in Atlanta once for the holidays, and during so, I was listening to this song and my goodness, it is such a vibe. And I will forever be grateful to this movie for introducing me to Running Back to You by For the Foxes, which has become one of my favorite songs like ever, thanks to it being played during the end credits and the final dance sequence, serving as the light at the end of the tunnel. I can personally assure you that a decade or so from now, you're gonna see me at my wedding with the love of my life as this song plays during our slow dance. And I can thank all of it to this dumb little movie. Drew Monson. Yeah, despite the fact that the character he plays is, well, a total creep, Drew's performance is honestly a highlight of the experience for me. My current Discord picture happens to be of the man himself right now. There's this energy, this charisma that radiates from him in every scene he's in, especially with how many of his lines seem to have been improvised while filming.
Joel, I like you. As a friend.
Oh, perfect.
I actually think he would have made for a better protagonist than this plank of wood.
What?
Even Jeremiah Lay and several of the others do a pretty good job at bringing their characters to life.
Did you run here?
I needed to talk to you and you weren't answering your phone.
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving and my mom makes us put our phones and beepers in a basket before we sit down to the table.
Beeper? Who has a beeper?
Gil.
I'm a doctor.
Orthodontist!
It's just what they're given to work with can be so abhorrent. And that's something else I can give the movie. Sure, it's upsetting, vulgar, and flamboyant, but it's not dull. There were actually a handful of jokes that did get a laugh out of me.
Better late than never, I guess.
You have a nice day, ma'am.
Even a couple of the messages and takeaways are pretty decent in a vacuum at least. Not only that, but there's a number of scenes where the characters are just interacting naturally, and it is so nice. Like the scene of Joel and Janie dancing together. I honestly thought it was wholesome as heck. Gee, people just acting like people is pleasant to watch? What a surprise. But of course, after every wholesome or okay moment comes a joke about blowjobs or diarrhea or something, and I'm reminded, oh yeah, that's why this movie has the reputation it does.
Give you an A+ with those titties. I mean, goddamn.
By the way, one time I had heard somebody say everyone who worked on this film should never be allowed to work in film again. Yeah, that's more than a little harsh, don't you think? I don't usually like pinning the blame on a single person in situations like these, as movies are made by hundreds or even thousands of people. But yeah, we gotta talk about this bloke.
And because of you guys, I made a movie, and it's coming.
Yep, it sure is, Shane, and in more ways than one. Now, if somebody else was in a director's chair and Shane was just the star of the show, we'd be singing a much different song right now, or not even at all for that matter. Because one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that Dane Shawson here was at times behind the camera an absolute jerkwad to those around him. Thankfully not towards any of the cast, it seems, but to his fellow higher-up crew members and consultants and everything. In the documentary, there are multiple instances where he argues about how his jokes don't need to be changed, resulting in circular reasoning, or he gets angry that people in the city don't want their names attached to this, or he doesn't want to hear certain people's opinions, and it's just hard to witness, man.
The script is not that raunchy. Somebody out there is a rat, and they're going around saying this is the raunchiest movie ever made, and it's pissing me the off.
And this was that other element of the film that I alluded to earlier that I 100% could never defend. Respect and listen to your crewmates, man. They're here to help.
Because she's saying it so many times that it's like...
We can only say it once?
So
then we either can say it or we can't.
No, that's not...
Do you understand what she's saying?
It's...
No, I don't either.
Just...
Okay.
Now, trust me, if I were anyone else, I could probably break down a film way more than I am right now, but like, what's the real point in doing so? What would I have to add there that would be of any interest to me, or hasn't already been said by somebody else? Shane isn't popular anymore, to my knowledge anyway, and the film itself had recently turned 10 years old. Wait, 2014 was a whole decade ago? Yeah, that sounds about right. So how about I finish the rest of this video with more of my personal history with the film. Now, part of the reason I even bothered to check out Not Cool in the first place has to do with the time period I had seen it in. For those of you who know me well, you'd remember that 2022 was, for me, simultaneously a really big deal and kind of a shit show. There were plenty of minor or important fun things going on at the time, but I was in a pretty humdrum state for multiple reasons, mostly this. Not only that, but the lingering prospect of getting a job and starting college the next year made me feel a little anxious. So I kinda needed something stupid to sorta ease the tension. Something like, I don't know, Not Cool. And after that, like on the subsequent Christmas trip, the year suddenly got a whole lot better, and my spirits were raised pretty substantially, all thanks to this piece of garbage movie. Following this, I would occasionally reference the movie with friends, resulting in their confusion from having no knowledge on what the heck I was talking about. It became a sort of inside joke amongst only myself, if you will, to the point where even just the mere sight or mention of it ends up leaving me in stitches. I used clips from it in several of my videos, like the opening to my Encanto video or that final quote from the end of my 2023 recap. Yep, both of those originated from this. Sometimes I'll have the film playing as background noise on a long-ass elevator ride, or while riding my bike through the neighborhood. And if any of you remember, this movie was suddenly thrusted into my haul of Christmas goodies last year, much to my family's surprise. Amidst all these cars and stuff was this random DVD of a film they'd never heard of before, and they inspected it with interest, completely unaware of what's hidden within. This image of my mother ignorantly holding it up to her face just sends me into a riot. Now, I purchased the DVD both because there's something kinda novel and surreal to owning a physical copy of such an infamous movie. The hilariousness alone of seeing my TV or my own lineup of DVDs with Shane Dawson's face on it was totally worth the eBay price. But the other reason was that I wanted to see what the deleted scenes had to offer, which I might as well go over with you.
So, pick you up at 7?
Totes.
I'm D.
Sounds good.
Now, most of these were cut for good reason, they just would have added more fuel to the fire in the offensive category, but there are a few that I do wish were included, unironically. The scene of Scott conversing with his buddies was kinda nice, because it actually gives you some kind of insight into our lead character, along with his sex-hungry girlfriend who dumps him at the beginning.
I'm sorry, Scott. It's over.
I also like the sequence of the crazy Black Friday shoppers storming through a mall, as that's kind of an afterthought in the final product.
Can we please get out of the women's section?
Look at that lady in the background with the mannequin. Honestly, I'm just happy to have seen every last scrap of this movie to help feed my inner over-obsession with it. I mean, what's next? Am I gonna unironically list down every character's line of dialogue into a note script? Oh no, I just did, didn't I? What is wrong with me? But why should I stop there? Why not get a framed poster up on my wall? Why not make an Endgame style tribute to the entire cast on my channel? No, I'm not actually doing that. How about I write a fanfiction sequel that takes place in the years following, where the main leads go on a road trip to Kentucky and stumble upon even crazier friends and family down there. We gotta expand the lore, guys, the lore! Hashtag Not Cool Cinematic Universe 2024. Though I feel I have to tread lightly here on my jokes because the more I go on, the more I risk digging myself deeper into Dawson's shady history and drama, and that has no right being on my channel. I wish for nothing but the best for all the cast and crew involved with this movie, with the exception of you-know-who. I'm sure they've all moved on to something better after this film's blunder, but still. Just a reminder, my friends, my enjoyment of this movie comes from superficial elements, its fascinating production, and the pure, unadulterated irony of it all. You wouldn't necessarily see me labeling it as a guilty pleasure of mine, clearly, nor will you catch me recommending it to someone.
Their queen impregnated me, and the baby grew to full size in less than 8 hours, and then it ate its way out of my uterus.
I still just want to know why it clicked with me the way it did. Perhaps it's Stockholm Syndrome? Maybe I had heard about the film through the lens of videos made by people I care about, and because I had rewatched said videos over and over again, I grew a sort of close bond with it, and that by the time I finally watched it, I became too familiar and therefore attached? I don't know. Sometimes when you talk about something for so long, your negative emotions start to diminish and you develop a weird mental connection with it. Well, the key word is sometimes. But you want to know the strange part? Well, let me rephrase that. The strangest part, much better. This isn't the first time something like this has happened to me, as the same thing occurred with another YouTuber film. You may have heard of it. Think back to 2019 again, to a humble little picture known as airplane mode.
You can't make me! You can't make me!
Yep, that crazy AF Logan Paul disaster, also full of raunchy and offensive humor. Yeah, that. So, SparkNote's version of the story. In spring of 19, many of my high school choir group members and I went on a week-long trip to Europe, and the plane rides to and fro were so exciting to me that it got me all into airports and stuff. And thanks to some hilarious timing, a heavily delayed YouTuber airplane parody released later that year. Obviously, I've never had a fondness for the Paul brothers, for very clear reasons, and my initial introduction to the disaster was through commentary YouTubers tearing it a new one, but as soon as I had cautiously checked it out for myself, I had found myself with a new minor fascination with it, kinda. My relationship with it was basically a reduced version of the one I have now with Not Cool. It's funny how history repeats itself like that. If I had a nickel for every time I was introduced to a really stupid, inappropriate, low-budget movie made by a YouTuber who I want nothing to do with, only for me to end up becoming weirdly attached to said film thanks to hyper-specific, partially ironic circumstances, complete with me even loving its choice of end credits music.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
I would say more about this, but Ellis Mark made a really great video talking about these movies, so I'd recommend you go and check that out when you're done here. Also, I feel like I should bring up Holidaysburg again, as I've kinda overlooked it in all this. I have seen it, it was obviously the superior movie, what a big surprise, I know. And I totally think Anna was robbed from her victory. Of course Shane won, he had a whole fan base ready to landslide the votes. I feel like this was rigged in his favor no matter what he did. However, as sad as it might be to admit it, I'll always end up remembering and thinking about Not Cool far more out of the two. Holidaysburg is a simply good movie, but doesn't have much sticking power. Meanwhile, Not Cool is so bizarre, boisterous, and backwards that it'll stick with me forever, whether I'm okay with that or not.
I'm so glad this is happening. I actually came to your door twice last night. Come on in, the water's fine.
Oh, Not Cool!
After all, if the movie was actually good, that'd be nice, but would I even be talking about it right now? Would anyone? Probably not. I specifically have a weird relationship with it because of all its faults. And positives, but whatever. It's filthy, it's nasty, it's kinda exhausting at points, and yet I keep returning to it again and again. And now I rewatch it like every Thanksgiving. It's like a car crash that you just can't take your eyes off of. Or like taking a dip into the insanity of a person's mind. Or like seeing if Todd Packer would be able to make a movie. At one point, I actually thought I was a psychopath for enjoying anything about it, but then I came across Awesome May's video about bad animated films, in which he said he has a very similar relationship as mine with this, but only with Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights instead. Yep, that one. He even describes it as a movie that he would put on a road trip or something, so I guess I'm not the only one in this kind of boat. We all have our own weird, difficult to explain hyperfixations that we sometimes try to cut our ties with, but ultimately have a soft spot for, or in this case, dark spot. All this being said, I think I've had enough not cool for one lifetime. I've had enough for 17 at this point. Admittedly, I was pretty hyped to finally talk about it for a good while, but now that I've actually done it, it just sort of feels like a flash in the pan footnote that I've kinda moved on from. I mean, a person can only overanalyze something so crass before it becomes old. Lord knows I have other, far better things to be spending my time on. Nah, who am I kidding? This movie has become too integral to my inner being for me to ever let it go, because out of all of this saddening mess of controversy and disgust, I found something to laugh at or talk about with friends, something that managed to cheer me up when I really needed it, provided a subject for me and several others to research and dissect, despite how much it makes us
I want to throw up every time I looked at it.
I found something that introduced me to talented people, incredible music, places, even messages that stick with me. And all of it can be traced back to this one amateur, out of nowhere, laughably stupid, comfort junk food holiday fodder thing that quite simply succeeded at being not cool. Wow, that was incredibly cheesy. Anyway, thank you all for making it this far into the video. You're a real trooper. You might have noticed that my audio quality is a bit of a step up from before. I'm just fiddling around to see what works best. Tell me if you think it sounds better. I'd love to hear it. Happy Turkey Day to you all, and I will see you in whatever my next video shall be. Cheerio!